if you're around people that don't think big, or they tell you, no, you can't do that, or they have that scarcity mindset, those people are poison. Those people are poison. They will drag you down. You've got to get a new peer group. You've got to surround yourself with people that think there's enough for everybody, that the world, and the opportunities continue to get better. Those are the people you want in your life for sure.
Welcome, everyone, to the Road Less Traveled Show. This is a show about people that were successful in a previous career and left that career to go down a different path. I'm your co-host, Richard Coyne.
And I'm your co-host, Bill Zahller.
On today's show, we have Chris Larsen. Chris, we're so glad you're with us. Thanks for joining.
Oh, man. Like I was saying, guys, I'm fired up to be here. Always a pleasure to talk to both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Well, I appreciate you being on the Road Less Traveled show and taking some time this afternoon. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your initial path you were on, and then how long you were in that career?
Yeah. So I talk about in my book, which I'd be happy to share with the audience here towards the end of the show, but I spent 18 years in the medical device industry, and I left here, as we were talking before the show here, Richard, comparing notes, just in the past year. And a lot of people, when they find out how I did it through real estate, they're like, oh, well, when did you start investing in real estate? And the answer is I actually started as a real estate investor before I entered my professional career. So I bought my first property at 21. But like most people out there that are listening today, I didn't have a bunch of money from my family. My first property, I did a nice 3% down loan. It was a $90,000 townhouse. So $2,500, $3,000 was what it took to get me in that property, along with a signature from my mom to help co-sign on the loan. And after I bought two properties, what I realized was I basically ran out of money and I ran out of credit. So I had to go find a job, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I actually was fortunate enough to meet Robert 2 years ago. He gave me a copy of his book at a meeting. And in that book, Robert talks about becoming accredited, how accredited investors have options for investments that non-accredited people don't have. I didn't know what those options were, but I knew I wanted to be accredited. So I'll never forget, I drove down the road and I was at Virginia Tech to Borders bookstore, not even Barnes and Noble. And I found this book on the shelf, and it was like 6-figure careers. And I started looking through those, and I ended up really kind of focusing on sales. And I thought, okay, maybe real estate sales. I love real estate, love investments. Or I heard about pharmaceutical sales, and I started to pursue that path. And what happened was I was introduced to somebody who sold hips and knees, and like joints. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if people are listening are like, yeah, this is like a common career path, but to me, it was something totally new. And I had a biomechanical engineering degree. I was not smart enough to be an engineer. Is what I say. My counselor pulled me aside and said, "You're not smart enough, and you have too much personality, Chris. You need to find something else to do," which is obviously a joke, but I knew being an engineer wasn't for me. And I met this gentleman who sold hips, knees, shoulders for Johnson & Johnson. And when he told me what he did, that he got to go into surgeries and that he got to work with surgeons, and he told me how much money he made, and he passed that accredited investor threshold of $300,000 a year, I said, I got to learn how to do that. So I set out on a path to do that. I was about 23 at the time when I learned about it. I became a full line rep 7 years later. So it took me quite a while to get there. And my whole plan was to make enough money so that I could save as much as possible and just plow it into real estate. And I did that for about 15 years. And my wife and I were able to call ourselves fully financially independent with a family of 4, and living a decent life by the time I was age 38.
Oh, that's great. And then as you've made that transition, Chris, what have you gone into now full time?
Yeah, so it's interesting, as life does, it throws you a lot of curveballs. And I started off, and I had a real simple plan, Bill. I just thought, okay, if I can buy enough properties that after my expenses, I can have $10,000 a month coming in, then that's going to get me, where I want to be. Now, this is a 22-year-old thinking through this, right? Mm-hmm. So, but even today, like $10,000 a month, that's a really nice amount for just about anybody, that wants to kind of pass that really, solid hurdle of financial independence. And I was doing it through single family rentals. So I thought, okay, if I can own enough single family rentals, have $10,000 a month after expenses coming in before debt service, all I have to do is pay those mortgages off and I'm set. But what I found over the years, and this is what I call the holy grail in my book, is, as you guys also know, multifamily real estate was way better than single family rentals. So I ended up selling all those single family rentals. I moved all that capital into commercial properties, mostly multifamily. We own a 7-unit office downtown, as well as some other different properties. And then over the ensuing 5 years, people started to say, well, hey, Chris, what do you invest in? Like, what are you doing? Or why did you sell your properties? And I said, oh, well, this is why. And I started telling about multifamily. And they said, how can I invest too? And my first partner and I, we decided, well, hey, we have as much or more experience than the group that we were investing with. So we ended up partnering with them, bought our first property in 2016, syndicated it, which most people are familiar with. We just partnered with investors, brought some other investors in. That was over 5 years ago now. And we just syndicated, I think it's our 15th deal.
Wow.
Maybe 16th year. I gotta go back and look and see. So my investors started out, I think I had like 5 investors, maybe 8 in that first deal. And now we're up over 500 investors. So it's built up really slowly, but as the word spread and people start to realize what a great investment commercial real estate is, and how much it adds to a portfolio. I mean, you guys know the secret, obviously, but it just kind of grew organically. And then it's as more and more people found out about it, and I got to share my message. It's nice to share these opportunities with them as well.
Oh, that's great. And that's, I think, something that everybody comes to at some point, Chris, right? They step back, and most people do start out with single family because it's what right? You know how to buy them, you know what neighborhoods are, you know how to kind of value that. But when you start doing the math and you start like, well, here's the number I'm trying to get to, and $100 net, as long as nobody moves out, there's no heater issue or roof, or all your profit's gone for the year, you start having to come to different conclusions. Which is what led us to
coaching. Yeah, I have a coaching client. He has 50 properties, maybe 40. He's either 48. I think he's at 48 right now. And you know how much money he makes? Makes zero. After expenses and maintenance and management, everything, he doesn't make any money. He doesn't have any cash flow. And I'm like, man, that's a lot of headaches. That's 48 headaches for not a lot of cash flow.
Right.
So, I mean, you can definitely make money in single family, but I think once you start to scale, commercial real estate makes a lot more sense.
And you should bring professional management in there and third party and all that, which makes it much more easier than trying to do everything yourself. And that's a full-time job, 48 more than a full-time job for one person.
Absolutely it is. And I think, that's, if you're listening, I think if you're trying to decide what space to go into, if you own a single family rental, if, people are like, oh, I'm making 30% on my money in my single family rental. I say, well, okay, how much are you putting aside for maintenance and, reserves? Mm-hmm. Most people say, what is that? 2, how much are you paying your property management company? They say, oh, I self-manage it, so I'm not paying for that. And then 3, how much are you putting aside for vacancy? And again, usually the answer is, well, I don't have any vacancy. So, if you go to a bank and they look at your income coming in, they usually say, hey, we'll give you about 75% of your gross rents coming in. Well, the banks know that you probably are going to spend 20 to 30% on those 3 things: vacancy, maintenance, and management. So if you're not accounting for those, you can't really do an apples to apples comparison. And that's usually where commercial real estate really wins out.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we try to caution people too that are starting on that path. Like when you budget and you set it out, like, here's what I think I can get for rent. Here's my payment. We always, say you want to factor in management, even if you're going to do it yourself, factor it into the number, make sure it cash flows with management, because at some point you may not want to or be able to do it for whatever reason. And it needs to still be able to sustain itself, which Absolutely. I think, like you said, a lot of people.
I think that's a great tip. Great tip, Bill. Yeah.
Yeah. And for those of us who want to be hands-on and want to be involved and do deals, again, I took the same approach, single family house, I still own it today. But again, that little bit of income, multiply that by X number of additional doors by being in a larger units. Again, obviously not all that cash flow is coming to me, it's coming to our investors, but I'm an investor as well. And that's great. And quite honestly, for the investor who doesn't have the time because they have a busy job, a busy family life and other things, and they want to invest passively, going into a commercial real estate investment through multifamily is an incredible opportunity. It's a great
Oh, yeah.
way, and there may very well be tax advantages and all the other reasons why
Oh, yeah.
why we love this market. So
Well, and Bill, we were talking. I spent when I was in the medical device industry, I was on call for 12 years of my 18 years, and I was working 60, 80, sometimes 100-hour weeks. I spent 3 nights straight in the hospital one time working. I worked 7 months straight. I mean, you guys both had very demanding careers as well. But when you're working 60, 80, plus hour weeks, the last thing I want to do is get a phone call. And, I'm like, I'm worn out. I'm tired. Like, I don't have any patience to talk to unhappy tenant, or I'm like, yeah, just fix the HVAC unit. Yeah. It's $1,000. I was like, whatever, I was just sick of it after 15 years. So,
it kind of goes hand in hand. Right.
Exactly.
I mean, the people that have the ability to invest passively is because they're very successful in their professional career. And then on the other hand, you need to look at, what's your highest and best use of your time, right? If you're earning, X dollars per hour on average at your employment, and then you don't want to, unstop a toilet at 2 a.m. for, it doesn't pay your time. It doesn't make any sense at that point, but people get wrapped.
I don't care if it's 2 p.m, Bill. Right. I don't want to unstop a toilet.
There's no good time for that.
Yeah. So Chris, think back to your medical device days. Is there a funny story you can share, something along the way that made you scratch your head?
I got a few. It depends who's listening. I got to be careful who but so again, I worked most of my career. I started off in, I spent 2 years working in the pharmaceutical industry. I spent a year working for Johnson & Johnson. I did joints, hips, knees, shoulders, trauma. And that was my dream job. It really was. But I had an opportunity to go and work for a company, Medtronic, which is probably familiar to some people listening. It's the world's biggest medical device company, like pure medical device company. J&J's bigger, but they're a big conglomerate. And the cool thing about the industry is, I had the engineering background, and I just didn't want to, be stuck in a basement or stuck in front of a computer all day. I got to work in the field. I got to work with the end users, the surgeons. And I always tell people I was fortunate because I got to work with geniuses every day, orthopedic spine surgeons, brain surgeons. And it's just an amazing experience to be in the OR contributing to patient care. It's also very stressful. These are humans that you work with, and there's nurses, there's techs that run all the equipment. There's nurse anesthetists, there's anesthetists, there's surgical techs that move in and out, that bring drugs and all this different stuff. And then, you get to work with people that clean the instruments. And these poor people make, $10, $15 an hour, and they're cleaning, instruments that have been used in surgery all day. So the cool thing is you get to work with all these different people. The downside is they're all humans, just like I am and you guys are, and they make mistakes. They get upset. They lose their temper. I've been yelled at. I've been yelled at in the hospital. I've been yelled at outside of the hospital. I've been blamed for things because as a guest in a hospital as a vendor, because you're basically a vendor. You're coming in as a vendor. You're the low man on the totem pole. So what I learned, a lot of times I tell people my first job was emptying trash from our local, our community beach. And I'll tell you what, if you empty trash from a beach in the middle of July, where people throw away diapers and meat and there's maggots, it's a very humbling experience. It's also a humbling experience when you know more than anybody in the room about the product you're selling, and you're treated with a lot of disrespect sometimes. So you always just have to remember kind of where you are, and it teaches you a good skill. So I think now working with investors, it's a pleasure, right? Working with investors versus some of the people I used to work with. But I learned a lot of lessons. I'm very grateful for that. But the final piece of that is it really wears you out. When you're on call, when you haven't, you slept 4 hours, 3-4 nights in a row, and you got to think straight. You have to be on, because if you make a mistake, that may mean, literally mean a patient's life, the difference between life and death. And I saw patients that did not make it out of surgery. Those memories will never, they'll never leave my mind. I still wake up thinking about, the families of those patients and those patients. So, I took my job very seriously all those years, and I take every dollar that an investor, trusts us with just as much seriousness.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Chris, what was kind of a deciding factor to get you to change? Was it, you said, the long hours, of course, a lot of the stress, and not always the ideal work environment? Or was it kind of a combination of those, or was it one specific thing, like you just realized, well, this has been a great path, we're accelerating, we're gaining momentum on the real estate side, or how did that come about?
Yeah. So I had, when I started off on my plan, Bill, I said, okay, I want to plan to be financially independent before I'm 40. And that was kind of my initial goal. So I set off down that path, and, part of the factor was the quality of life. I have two young boys. They're going to be 10 on Saturday and 12 this coming March here, shortly after the show airs. And, having my father pass away at 5, I was 5 years old. He was 41. I knew that life is short, and I didn't want to miss a lot of experiences. So when my children were young, being on call wasn't that big of a deal, because, the other days I was home. I wasn't missing sporting events, because when they were younger, it was either there weren't sporting events, or they were close and I could make them. But when you miss, or start to come close to missing birthdays or Mother's Days, or those sorts of things, you realize that you're never going to get those days back. And I knew I wanted to have more control. And even once I hit the point where I was, I didn't have to work anymore, I still wanted to produce. I wanted to make the world a better place. So, kind of what I did, I actually, even as I mentioned, 38, I shifted into a leadership role at that point, which I really wanted to explore in the medical device industry. And I told myself, I'm going to do this as long as I'm providing value and I'm having a good time. And what I realized was, after COVID, the real estate business continued to grow. That downtime gave me a chance to write my book, which you can get on our website at nextlevelincome.com. And as people heard about it, people wanted to invest. And I just kind of looked at what was going on and the balance of our life about a year and a half ago. And I said, okay, I need to start thinking about this. And I was on a ski trip with my son last year, and he looked at me and he said, "Man, Dad, I had such a great time. We were coming back from Utah." He goes, I wish we could do more of this." And I looked in his eyes, and that was the moment I said, "You know what? We are going to do more of this." And I came home the next week, and I had a conversation with my VP, and I laid out a plan for the territory. And he said, "Well, Chris, this plan doesn't include you." And I said, "That's right." And I said, "It's time for me to transition out." And he knew I had some real estate investments and some other stuff that I was doing. So I put a plan in place. I stayed on and consulted for a little while with the company I was with. And now I get to take my boys to school in the morning, make them dinner in the evenings. I don't have to miss their sporting events anymore. But it was when my son looked in my eyes and said that, I knew that was time.
Yeah. And it's, so powerful, because you're right. You never get that back. Right. That's their childhood growing up, is their memories they're going to have, it's both sides of that. Yeah. It's incredibly motivating force. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I will also say, I was down in Florida last week. I was gone for a couple of nights. I still travel. I'm not here every single day with them. But my boys know, my family knows, we go to the properties, we go to every property that we acquire. They get to see it. We drive in the neighborhoods, we celebrate. So, when when we bought one of our properties in Atlanta, we went to the new Braves stadium that opened down there and did that. So we celebrate. So they see that Dad makes sacrifices, and, there's time away. But then they also see that what the benefits of it are. And just like them, sometimes they're at sporting events and they're at practice and we're not together. So I think there's lessons on both sides of that.
Sure. That's great.
Sure.
Yeah.
And with this success comes the celebration. So that's a great way to do it, to keep a nice balance. So good.
Yeah,
so
you
Chris,
can't forget that. You got to have a little fun along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chris, as you were really moving more in the direction of toward full-time real estate and what you do now, were there some obstacles you encountered along the way?
Yeah, I think, this was the most surprising, Richard. So I had all this anxiety towards the middle of last year, when I realized that I didn't have to, I was like, okay, I don't have to do this job anymore. And I kind of made this choice that I was going to leave. And again, this was before my son said that to me. So I kind of knew it was coming. I just didn't, I didn't have a timeline in place, but I was like, okay, I'm going to leave at some point here in the next couple of years. And it is really interesting as I think as a man, as a father, as a provider in our society, like we define ourselves, especially men, like, women, they're mothers, they make choices that, probably is part of the reason they don't make as much as men in the workplace. They're more well-rounded, where men, I think maybe it's not as healthy. We spend more time working, and, maybe we can make more money or ascend the career ladder faster. But, we've wrapped our identity up with our professional careers, and, hey, what do you do? How much do you make? Oh, I'm a VP. I make this much money. It's like, it makes you, it's part of your ego as a man. I think for a lot of people. And what I realized was, I had been in this career for 18 years. I was successful. I was good at it. I was in a leadership role. I would help people on a daily basis solve problems. And it was really anxiety producing to think about leaving that role. And I think what scared me the most, Richard, and maybe people are listening saying, this is ridiculous, Chris, like you don't have to work anymore and you're worried about it. But what I realized was I was anxious about not being relevant. Like, what if I wake up tomorrow and nobody needs me? Like nobody's gonna call me. And what I realized was it wasn't just being relevant; it was contributing. And I worked with a coach, and we went out one day out in the woods, and we talked, and he kind of had me really kind of meditate and think about what I was really meant to do. And I started my coaching business at that point, because what I realized was I really enjoy mentoring and sharing knowledge with those that are younger. So the podcast, the book, I have a small group. I only coach 8 to 10 clients at one time, but having that group that I can help mentor and help out and really give them the shortcuts, like, so they don't have to spend the 15 years that I did, making the mistakes. It gave me the confidence to make that move, and stay relevant. And also, like I said, I think contribute to making the world a better place in some way, shape, or form.
That's great. Yeah. Well, Chris, what was, can you think back to what your first victory was in your new career? I know it kind of, some of them overlap. So a little bit of doing both when you fully made the switch, and like I said, it clicked that this is the right choice. I'm going down the right path. And do you have a win you can think of in mind?
Yes. I mean, I could easily say, oh, that first, 100 unit property we bought, it was like, wow, like this is like, you guys have felt it. It's like, that's it. Like once you get that momentum going. But it's funny what actually told me that I made the right choice. I didn't make any money. It wasn't from a coaching client. It wasn't from an investor. But a friend asked me if I could speak to one of his employees, a younger gentleman that worked for him. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Like give my info. And he called me, and he kind of went through, and he's like, man, I'd love to invest, and I'd love to have real estate. But, my wife and I, we just got married. We're early in our careers. We don't have a lot of money. And I said, well, talk me through like your situation. He starts telling me, he's like, oh, we just bought a house, and it's actually just south of Asheville. And it's got this like, it's really cool. And it's actually got this little cabin. I was like, cabin. So he starts telling me about it. And I said, have you ever could you fix that up and maybe turn it into like a short-term rental? And he said, yeah. He goes, I've never really thought about that. So he calls me back about 3 months later, and he goes, Chris, I just got to, he goes, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I said, sure. What's up? He goes, I just wanted to thank you. I said, for what? He goes, we spent $30,000. We fixed it up. We've been Airbnb in it. Like it's totally changed our lives. We're looking at buying our next Airbnb. And he goes, like your advice, your podcast, the information, it's totally changed my life. And that's really, Bill, when you get a call like that, or my, a really good friend of mine from college called me last month and said, Chris, I got to thank you. I sat down with our financial advisor, and we realized that I don't have to work anymore. And he's in pretty high level position with, a a really well-known company. And I said, that's awesome. And he said, well, he goes, it's because of what you shared with me 4 years ago about investing in this space. He goes, now we have enough passive income coming in that I can either work part-time, but I want to volunteer with my kids and do this. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. Those are the calls, Bill, that make me realize that, not just kind of signing off and saying, okay, I don't have to work anymore, but continuing and, sharing all the lessons that, I've learned, that you all have learned, just like we're doing today, sharing the message with people so they can see what's possible in the future. That's that's what really lights me up and gets me up every day.
Right. And it's great. I mean, see you have that kind of positive effect on somebody's life, right? I mean, because it changes their trajectory as well. And it's not like the small pie syndrome. There's plenty for everyone. It's just, you have to have that abundance mindset as it goes forward.
That is so strong. Yeah. You just you got to surround yourself with people with that same mindset. I think that's my number one. If you're listening today, that's the number one thing I would take away from this, what Bill just said, which is, if you're around people that don't think big, or they tell you, no, you can't do that, or they have that scarcity mindset, those people are poison. They will drag you down. You've got to get a new peer group. You've got to surround yourself with people that think there's enough for everybody, that the world, and the opportunities continue to get better. Those are the people you want in your life for sure.
Right. And we're always saying that too, about, kind of, I forget who said it originally, but like you're kind of an amalgamation of your 5 closest friends, right? I mean,
Bill Rohn.
Yeah.
Jim Rohn. Sorry.
Jim Rohn. Yeah. Because I mean, it's true. And not only, because, it's possible because you see other people in your peer group doing it. But I think it's also getting the juices flowing on your mind. You're thinking about deals. People are talking about deals. And we talk about that reticular activating system too, that you start noticing things that are always there, but you weren't paying attention to them until something tripped and made you start noticing the opportunities, which I think is critical. If you, like you said, you close-minded people and they don't think anything's possible and everything's always down, you're never going to experience that, or it's much harder to.
Well said.
Having a growth mindset is so incredible. It's important. And again, really, back to the abundance thing, there's no shortage of money. Money continues to grow and be increased and created every day. You just need to look for the opportunities that you can be part of to leverage that and take advantage of it. So, yeah.
Especially recently with 40% of the money in circulation.
Yeah, literally created every day. Yeah. Right. Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
But if you're not the government, then you got to look for other ways to create your own money.
Right. So, Chris, is there, in your new path, is there a humor story, something funny along the way you can share?
Oh, geez, I have to think about this one for a little bit. But yeah, I just, the ability to spend more time with my kids. I mean, I got some stories. I can't really share what they say, but again, I think for me, having anybody that's listening that has kids, you get these just magical moments, right? You get these magical moments. So I was taking my boys to school one day, and my older son, he's a tremendous athlete, very talented, and he's also has this kind of like natural protector gene in him. So he talks about like wanting to be a police officer or Navy SEAL, kind of like that's kind of in his mind. And he certainly has just like, this intensity and this ability where he could probably do that. My younger son is a little different. He's very intellectual. He's, he can sit for long periods of time and concentrate, put Legos together. He's very gifted with, analytical things like math. And he's always asking things like, Dad, how much money do you make? Or, how much did it cost to buy that? How much was that car? What's are we millionaires? Like what, he's always like, trying to triangulate and find these data points, even if I won't tell him. So, he'll be like, well, do we have this much or this much or that much? And I have to outthink him. Right. So one day we're talking, he wants to be an engineer. He wants to design cars. And we're talking about borrowing money from a bank, I think is how we got into it. And he's like, well, Dad, do bankers make a lot of money? And I said, yeah, bankers do really well. I said, yeah. And I started talking about financing and different things. And he's like, I think I want to own a bank when I grow up. And I said, I like that. And my older son turns, he goes, I want to be a police officer when I grow up. And I was like, that's great too. And my younger son turns to my older son. He goes, that's good, because then you can guard my bank for me.
Nice.
Just synergy. Nice.
Yeah. I love that. I was like, that is fantastic. So, and my older son, he's always trying to come up with some way to top my younger son. And he just stared at him. And I took about 5 seconds and I just couldn't help myself. And I started laughing. And I was like, there you go. You guys think you guys can partner, but yeah, so I'll never, all these, there's tons of these little moments, but that's one of the clean ones that I can, that I can share with the audience here today. And I'll share some more in private with you guys after the show.
Oh, that's great. Well, Chris, where are you today in your journey? You started, you've gone full-time into the real estate and the syndication business. You have a coaching program also. So kind of where are you along your path as you're transitioning out to full-time?
Yeah. So we've continued to scale the multifamily business, Bill, but we've also added some other options out there. We have a self-storage fund now. We bought our first mobile home park this past year. So, being able to spend full time doing this, I've been able to explore other opportunities, not only for myself and my family for investments, but also that we can now offer to other investors. So it's been a lot of fun. I love looking at deals. I love, kind of being an investor first. And then, sharing those things with other people. The most recent thing, we have a small development here we're doing locally. And I think, it's an interesting time. As I talk about in my book, we really you guys know, we have the shortage, right, of housing. Yeah. We don't have enough apartments. We don't have enough houses. I think we're in a really interesting period here for the next, 3 to 5 years. That's a real opportunity for investors to jump in and take part in what's going to be, something that a lot of people need. So you can fulfill a need, you can make money from it, and you can do good all at the same time.
That's great.
Yeah. Chris, speaking of doing good, is there something that you do to give back to, perhaps help the community, help, neighbors, something like that? Anything you can share?
Yeah. So there's a local nonprofit here called Open Doors of Asheville, and Open Doors helps underprivileged children really develop and then ultimately go to college. And we sponsored them we sponsored a friend of ours. He ran 100 miles to raise $100,000 for this organization. He's 17 years old. Okay. Really inspirational. And we're like, yeah, of course we're going to help you out. So I was talking to the director at Open Doors, and I said, oh, do you have a financial literacy program? And they said, no, we don't. So we helped start a financial literacy program there last year. And I really think that, if you look around the world, money starts wars, debt starts wars. Like if you look at World War II, you look at the unrest, you look at, countries, that don't have sound money. Some could argue that we're kind of going down a path here in this country, but I think we're doing, relatively speaking, pretty well. But I think in your own personal life, if you understand money, if you understand debt, if you understand investments, you can really open the doors to so much more. And my personal belief is if you have financial independence, financial freedom, you can be your best self. And the first step in that is financial literacy. So that's my area of expertise, and that's what we focused on in the local community. And that program it's officially funded. They hired a friend of mine to fully run that. It's really cool to see, in a year it come and go full circle. So I'm particularly excited about that.
That's great. That's one thing that Kiyosaki talks about, way back to his first book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, just that the financial literacy in this country is just not there. There's so many people that don't understand this. There's so many people that think making money is evil. Well, come on, how did all the churches get built over the years? How did all the Good Samaritan had money, so nobody would remember him if he didn't have money, right? So, money enables you to give back to other people, and by making more money, you wind up helping others. So, financial literacy is super important, and that's great. You're working in that direction to support that effort.
Yeah, absolutely. When you guys are doing it too with this show, I love it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I think we talked about kind of the bifurcation now that's happening with the amount of, inflation we're seeing now is not really transitory, but and it's a lot of stuff. I think it's underreported. I mean, that 6.8, I think, was the headline number. Look at
it's probably more like 12 or 14. Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, you look at everything else. Autos, everything else is well above that number. So I don't know how it averages down, but to that point, you want hard assets, right? I mean, that's the stuff you're teaching, the financial literacy. We talk about too. You want to own businesses, you want to own real estate, things that are going to be able to price for inflated money. People that are stuck that can't get into housing or have no hard assets, they're going to fall farther behind because they're going to get, the inflation is a higher tax on them than people that have hard assets. So that's why I think it's so critical. Like you're doing, what we want to do is, help educate people to help them, participate in the upside on that.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think, the people who are hurt most by these policies are those that are further down the socioeconomic ladder. And, the gap is going to get bigger and bigger. So we need programs, we need financial literacy programs. We need, I think, if we're going to put policies in place, it should be policies that help these people, get to the first step, own a house, get out of debt. If you're listening, like one of the things I just wrote if you go to nextlevelincome.com/kids, I have 5 steps to help your kids become financial pros. And the last one is understand the real cost of college. Telling somebody that can't afford it, just go to college, get a college degree. That's irresponsible. You got to understand the return on investment of college. You have to understand what options are out there. Even something like that, you can put somebody into tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt that drags them down for the rest of their life. And, I think there's just basic things like that. So again, 5 steps to help your kids become financial pros. nextlevelincome.com/kids. You can read my 5 tips to help, whether your kids are 5 or 15 or 25, you can help them out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. And, obviously, personally spent a lot of time I have 3 young daughters too. And, a lot on, the whole like financial literacy, between saving and your stock account, what you're looking for, and the idea of, earning money around the clock. If you have SB 500, somebody in China at midnight when you're sleeping is earning money for that company that you get a small fraction as it flows back in. I mean, just like you said, you get that way of thinking from a young age and realize how it really works versus, it's so consumer driven as far as all the marketing. It's just spend. There's no savings or how you get to that point without using credit and spending beyond a lot of people's means, which is the wrong message in my opinion. But yeah.
Yeah. Indeed.
Well, Chris, what's something you've recently implemented to help you further your business as you scale more and more?
Yeah. So this year, I read a book. It's by Dan Sullivan. He started Strategic Coach, which I've been a part of for a couple of years. And my motto for this year was who, not how. So instead of trying to figure out how to do everything myself, Bill, I started to say, okay, who can I find that can do this better than me? Mm-hmm. And this is, Richard, you mentioned this. It's like, all right, more of an abundance mindset, right? If I'm paying somebody, $15, $20, even $50 an hour, well, I should be able to earn more than that. I value my time a lot higher than that. So I've decided, we brought in a nanny to help out with our kids, to shuttle them around in the afternoons, because my wife's an architect. She wants to keep working. That wasn't really quality time, like in between your kids' school and practice and sitting there for an hour and a half at soccer practice while they're running around. Not very effective use of time. Hiring a virtual assistant was another thing that I did. To do that, I brought in a new production and marketing company, that I've worked with. So again, that mindset of who, not how, and bringing in these really professionals in these spaces that do the job that I could do for cheap, like quote unquote cheaper, but maybe not as well, might have saved me some money. But I will tell you that the reason that I've done so well financially this year is because I've been able to focus on the things that I'm good at, but it also allows me to do things like make dinner for my family at night, which means we have a better quality time at night. It means that I can, work out and be healthier. It means that I can go and volunteer and start this financial literacy program. So, I've been able to help kind of spread the wealth, if you will, by paying people that have great businesses. And then I've been able to focus on what I'm good at and do more of that.
That's great. Yeah. That's great.
Highest and best use of your time. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. Chris, what advice would you have to share with somebody who's considering making a path change?
Yeah. So first, don't be rash. Like, I know people and they're like, I'm done, I quit, and they leave. Well, don't quit. Like, put together a plan. So we're coming up on the new year. On my website, I talk about like how to create your 3-year vision. Okay. So the first thing I would do is I would take some time. I mean, like a weekend. I don't mean like an hour, in between phone calls. I mean, no phone, no computer, just you. Think about what you really want your life to look like in 3 years. I love 3 years because I feel like it's kind of like the Goldilocks amount of time. 1 year, a lot of people overestimate what they can get done. 5 years, people, don't understand how much can change in 5 years. I really like 3 years. Start with the 3-year plan, then work backwards. Get to a year and figure out what you need to do over the next year to start going down that path. Once you figured out what that is, so if you say, "Hey, I want to make, I want to invest in my first syndication," then have an action item. Call Bill, call Richard, figure out, what some good questions to ask are, how you can evaluate a deal and do that. And then the last piece of that is find somebody that's done that. Find somebody that's walked that path, whether they're a mentor or a coach, and bring them on board alongside you. Because I will tell you, if you're making a big career change, I hired a coach. I'm on my second coach in the past 3 years as I've kind of evolved. And I will tell you that the 2 coaches I've worked with, and then the masterminds that I've been in to give me that support, have just absolutely launched me to my next level. No pun intended. So that's the thing. Get a clear vision in your head, 3 years out, put some action items in place over the next year, and then find a coach or mentor to help vet your actions over the next year to help accelerate your path and make sure you're going down the right one.
That's great.
They say learn from your mistakes. Well, better, I'd rather learn from the mistakes of others.
Pay somebody else to learn from their mistakes. And
right.
Yeah, it's you will save a lot more time, or a lot more money, and even more importantly, more time, which you can't ever get back.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Well, Chris, what's the best way for our listeners to reach out and learn more about either coaching programs or what you're doing in your investments and what you have along those lines? Yeah.
So the best thing to do is check out nextlevelincome.com. We have a blog up there, a ton of information, have all our podcasts up there. You can get a copy of my book for free. Just click on the book link. If you put your address in, I'll even send you a copy.
Nice.
And then I think I mentioned it earlier, but if you like those, if you want to get those tips for your kids, nextlevelincome.com/kids. It's kind of a little hidden page in there. And of course, you can reach out to me at chris@nextlevelincome.com.
Excellent. And we'll put all those in the show notes too, so make it easy for listeners to find.
Excellent.
Well, Chris, we really appreciate you being on the Road Less Traveled show today. Enjoyed the conversation very much and wish you continued success.
Always, my friends. It's always great to see you guys, and wishing you the very best as we go into this new year as well.
Absolutely. Chris, thanks for being on. Really appreciate you being here with us, spending time today. We'd also like to thank our listeners. Please continue to give us a 5-star rating so we can bring you more great content like Chris Larsen today. And also, we'd like to thank our sponsor. Park Capital Partners sponsors this show. We'd also want to remind everybody about the Park Capital Value Add Fund. That's a 506c fund that's out and available now. And then finally, about the Park Capital Foundation, that is a 501c3 nonprofit foundation. And we'll put some information about that in the show notes. And thanks again for being on, Chris. Remember, folks, the road less traveled may be calling you. We recommend that you listen and take action. Thanks for joining.